You ever notice how your great-grandmother could feed 8 people on a chicken carcass and some wilted vegetables, but you throw away a refrigerator full of food every week because you don't know what to make? She's been dead for 30 years and she's still more capable than you are. That's not an accident. Someone spent a fortune making sure you'd forget everything she knew. This is the story of the greatest heist in human history. Not a bank robbery, not a stock manipulation. This is the systematic theft of competence from an entire civilization. They didn't take your money, at least not directly. They took something far more valuable. They took your ability to survive without them. And once they had that, they had everything else. Your money, your time, your future, your children's future. All of it flowing steadily upward into hands that produce nothing, fix nothing, make nothing. They just own the systems you can no longer live without. The evidence starts in a kitchen in rural Iowa, 1937. The Depression is 8 years deep and showing no signs of ending. A woman named Dorothy stands at her kitchen counter, a jar of last summer's tomatoes in her hand. She's looking at it like it's treasure because, in a very real sense, it is. That jar represents food security in the middle of winter, when fresh vegetables cost more than her husband makes in a week. She canned these tomatoes herself, grew them in her garden, picked them, blanched them, sealed them in jars she's used for 10 years and will use for 10 more. The entire process cost her maybe 5 cents, most of that for the salt and the fuel to boil the water. Her daughter is watching, learning, not from a cookbook or a YouTube video, from repetition, from necessity. The girl is 14 years old and she already knows how to can vegetables, cure meat, bake bread, churn butter, make soap from bacon grease and lye. She knows how to slaughter a chicken without flinching. She knows which parts of a pig are edible and which aren't. She knows how to render fat into lard that will keep for months in the cellar. These aren't charming homesteading hobbies. This is survival technology, refined over thousands of years, passed from mother to daughter in an unbroken chain that stretches back beyond recorded history. Walk into Dorothy's house, and you'll see almost nothing that was purchased new. The furniture was built by her father-in-law from trees on their property. The quilts on the beds are made from worn-out clothing, every scrap saved and repurposed. The curtains were flour sacks. The rugs are braided from fabric too damaged even for quilts. Her wedding dress, worn once in 1922, has been taken apart and turned into a Sunday dress for her daughter. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is disposable. Every object has a use. And when that use is exhausted, the object is transformed into something else. Her husband Walter is in the barn, reshaping a horseshoe on an anvil he inherited from his grandfather. The horse threw the shoe 2 days ago. In town, a new horseshoe would cost 25 cents. He doesn't have 25 cents. More accurately, he has 25 cents, but it's earmarked for kerosene because the nights are getting cold and they're already burning the lamp as little as possible to make the fuel last. So he heats the old shoe, hammers it back into shape, nails it back on. The horse doesn't know the difference. The shoe will last another 6 months. 25 cents saved is 25 cents that stays in his pocket. His son is watching this process with the intense focus of a child who understands that this knowledge will determine whether he eats or goes hungry in 20 years. The boy is learning to read metal the way you might learn to read a book. He's learning that heat changes everything. He's learning the exact color of hot iron that means it's ready to shape. He's learning the rhythm of the hammer, the angle of the strikes. No one is explaining this to him in words. He's absorbing it through observation, through osmosis. This is how skills were transmitted for most of human history. Watch, try, fail, watch again, try again, eventually succeed. The boy will carry this knowledge for the rest of his life. Now freeze this scene. Lock it in your mind. Because within 20 years, Everything you're seeing will be deliberately destroyed, not by war, not by natural disaster, by prosperity, by abundance, by a carefully orchestrated campaign to convince Americans that everything Dorothy and Walter know is worthless, embarrassing, a mark of poverty and failure. The skills that let them survive the worst economic collapse in modern history will be reframed as quaint relics of a backward time. And the people who remember how to do these things will be dismissed as old-fashioned, out of touch, irrelevant. The transformation begins in 1945, the moment the war ends. Factories that have been running 3 shifts a day building bombers and tanks are suddenly idle. Millions of workers who've been employed in war industries are facing unemployment. Economists and government officials are terrified. They remember what happened after the First World War, the recession, the labor unrest, the fear. They can't let that happen again. The economy needs to absorb all this productive capacity, all these workers, all this industrial might. But how? Who's going to buy all these goods when the government stops buying weapons? The answer comes from an unlikely source. Retail analysts studying consumer behavior during the war have noticed something interesting. Despite rationing, despite shortages, despite the scarcity of consumer goods, Americans have been saving money at unprecedented rates. War bonds, savings accounts. The cash is piling up because there's nothing to buy. The economy is starving for consumer goods while consumers are starving for anything to purchase. The solution is obvious. Convert those factories from making tanks to making refrigerators, from making bombers to making automobiles, from making military uniforms to making fashionable clothing. Redirect that industrial capacity toward domestic consumption. But there's a problem. And it's sitting right there in Dorothy's kitchen in Iowa. She doesn't need a new refrigerator. She has an icebox that works perfectly fine. The Iceman delivers a block twice a week. She doesn't need a washing machine. She's been washing clothes by hand for 20 years, and they come out clean. She doesn't need a vacuum cleaner, or a toaster, or an electric mixer, or any of the hundreds of appliances that factories are ready to produce. She has methods that work, she has skills, she has time. Most importantly, she has a mindset forged in the Depression that says you don't buy things you don't absolutely need. This mindset is a problem for capitalism in the post-war era. As long as Americans think like Dorothy, the economy can't grow the way economists want it to grow. Factories will produce at half capacity. Workers will be laid off. The consumer economy will sputter and stall. So Dorothy has to be changed. Her values have to be altered. Her skills have to be devalued. Her self-sufficiency has to be reframed as drudgery. And her daughter, that 14-year-old girl learning to can tomatoes, she especially has to be reached before those Depression-era values calcify. She has to be taught that her mother's way is the hard way, the old way, the wrong way. Enter the advertising industry, fresh off 4 years of selling war bonds and military recruitment. These people have gotten very, very good at manipulating emotions and shaping behavior. They've learned how to make people feel guilty if they're not contributing enough to the war effort. They've learned how to make people feel proud when they sacrifice. They've learned how to associate products and behaviors with patriotism, with duty, with social acceptance. Now they're going to use those exact same techniques to sell peacetime products. The strategy is sophisticated and multi-layered. First, they have to create dissatisfaction with the current state of affairs. Dorothy is content with her icebox. She has to be made to feel that her icebox is inadequate, old-fashioned, a sign that she's falling behind. The advertisements start appearing in magazines. Beautiful women in spotless kitchens standing next to gleaming white refrigerators. The copy doesn't say, "Your icebox is broken." It says, "Modern women deserve modern conveniences." It says, "Don't slave away like your grandmother did." It says, "You owe it to your vase family to have the best." Notice the framing. Dorothy's skills are recast as slavery. The competence that allowed her to survive the Depression is now drudgery. The self-sufficiency that gave her family food security is now deprivation. The woman in the advertisement isn't working hard. She's not capable. She's not skilled. She's simply modern. She has the right appliances. She's purchased her way into the good life. This is the message, repeated thousands of times in thousands of advertisements. Your worth as a woman isn't in what you can do. It's in what you can buy. Television arrives in the late 40s and early 50s like gasoline poured on this fire. Suddenly, the advertisements aren't just pictures in magazines. They're moving, talking, singing invasions of your living room. Families gather around this glowing box every evening, and between the programs, they're bombarded with messages about products they need, problems they didn't know they had, solutions that require opening their wallets. A typical family in 1955 watches 4 hours of television a day. That's roughly 1 hour of advertising per day, 7 hours per week, 365 hours per year, an entire year of their lives, every decade, spent absorbing commercial messages. The shows themselves are part of the sales pitch. Situation comedies set in suburban homes filled with modern appliances, dramas where the characters always have new cars, new clothes, new everything. Game shows where the prizes are consumer goods, refrigerators and washing machines and televisions, all presented as valuable treasures worth screaming about. The line between programming and advertising blurs until it's almost invisible. The entire apparatus of television exists to sell you things. The shows are just the bait. Dorothy's daughter is 25 now. It's 1953. She's married with 2 children of her own. She still knows how to can tomatoes, but she doesn't do it much anymore. Her husband has a job at the factory. They have cash income, real money, not just scraping by. And there's a television in the living room now, purchased on credit, monthly payments. She watches those shows. She sees those kitchens. She sees those smiling women with their electric appliances, and something inside her starts to shift. Maybe her mother's way isn't the only way. Maybe it isn't even the best way. She mentions to her husband that a refrigerator would be nice. He's resistant at first. They're saving for a house. A refrigerator costs as much as he makes in 2 months, but she keeps mentioning it. Her friends are getting them. The women on television have them. She's starting to feel embarrassed when people visit and see their old icebox. She's starting to feel like they're falling behind. So he gives in. They buy the refrigerator on credit. More monthly payments. The icebox goes to the dump. Perfectly functional, but suddenly worthless. The refrigerator is beautiful. It's enormous. It hums quietly in the corner of the kitchen, a white monument to modernity. And for the first few months, she loves it. But then, something strange happens. She stops canning tomatoes. Why bother when she can just buy canned tomatoes at the store and keep them in the refrigerator? She stops preserving food for the winter. Why preserve when you can refrigerate? The garden gets smaller, then smaller again. Then it disappears entirely. Why garden when vegetables are cheap at the supermarket and the refrigerator keeps them fresh? Within 5 years, she's forgotten half of what her mother taught her. Not deliberately. It's just that she doesn't use those skills anymore, so they atrophy. Use it or lose it. The neural pathways weaken. The muscle memory fades. And she doesn't teach her daughters what her mother taught her, because why would she? Those skills are obsolete now. They're from the old days, the hard days, the days before refrigerators and supermarkets and frozen dinners. Her daughters will have it easier. They won't need to know how to can tomatoes. They'll just buy them. This same process is happening in millions of homes across America. An entire generation is being de-skilled, and they're happy about it. They think it's progress. They think they're being liberated from drudgery. And in some ways, they are. Washing clothes by hand is back-breaking work. Canning vegetables is hot, tedious, and slightly dangerous if you mess up the sterilization. Nobody is suggesting those things were fun. But something important is being lost in the exchange. Agency, capability, the knowledge that you can feed yourself without depending on industrial supply chains. That knowledge is evaporating like water in the desert sun. The corporations notice this. They notice that consumers are forgetting how to do things, and they realize this is fantastically profitable. A consumer who can't cook needs to buy prepared food. A consumer who can't sew needs to buy new clothes when the old ones tear. A consumer who can't fix things needs to buy replacements when things break. Helplessness is a renewable resource. The more helpless people become, the more they need to buy. It's a perpetual profit machine. So they accelerate the process. Home economics classes in schools start teaching less about actual economics and more about consumer choices. Instead of learning to sew, students learn to shop for clothing. Instead of learning to cook from scratch, they learn to follow recipes that require purchasing specific branded ingredients. Instead of learning to fix things, they learn that broken things should be replaced. The curriculum shifts from production to consumption, from capability to dependency. Product design changes too. Manufacturers realize that repairability is bad for repeat sales. If you sell someone a toaster in 1960 and they can easily repair it for the next 30 years, you've made one sale and lost a customer for 3 decades. But if you design the toaster so that repairs are difficult or impossible, so that it fails right after the warranty expires, then you can sell that same customer 5 or 6 toasters over those 30 years. The math is simple. Planned obsolescence becomes industry standard. The phrase is coined in the 50s. Planned obsolescence. The deliberate design of products to fail or become undesirable within a specific time frame. Engineers are instructed to find the failure points and calibrate them. Too early, and you get warranty claims. Too late, and you lose future sales. There's a sweet spot, usually somewhere around 3 to 5 years, where the product fails and the customer blames themselves or bad luck rather than the manufacturer. That's the target. That's the goal. Light bulbs are the perfect example. In the 1920s, manufacturers formed a cartel called the Phoebus Cartel. Their explicit purpose was to limit the lifespan of light bulbs to 1,000 hours. Before the cartel, bulbs were being made that lasted 2,500 hours or more. But longer-lasting bulbs meant fewer sales, so the cartel members agreed to engineer their bulbs to fail faster. They would fine any member who produced bulbs lasting too long. This is documented history. This actually happened. They made light bulbs worse on purpose to sell more of them. This pattern repeats across industries. Nylon stockings are made thinner and more fragile. Appliances are built with cheaper components that wear out faster. Automobiles are designed with rust-prone steel and parts that need frequent replacement. Everything is calibrated to maximize repeat purchases. And consumers, now de-skilled and dependent, have no choice but to comply. They can't repair what they don't understand. They can't fix what they're not allowed to open. They can't make what they were never taught to create. By 1970, the transformation is nearly complete. Dorothy is in her 70s now, watching her grandchildren grow up in a world she barely recognizes. They can't cook. They can't sew. They can't fix anything. They throw away clothes with broken zippers. They eat frozen dinners every night. They've never canned a vegetable in their lives. When she tries to teach them, they're polite, but disinterested. Why learn these obsolete skills when you can just buy what you need? She doesn't understand what's happened. She thinks maybe she failed somehow, failed to pass on her knowledge. But it's not her fault. The entire culture has turned against everything she knows. Advertisements mock the old ways. Television shows portray her generation as backwards. Even her own children treat her skills as amusing quirks, like knowing how to churn butter is a cute party trick rather than essential survival knowledge. The culture has decided that making things is for poor people and buying things is for successful people. She's on the wrong side of that equation. Fast forward to today. You're standing in your kitchen, looking at a refrigerator full of rotting food that you bought with good intentions but never cooked. You can't remember the last time you made something from scratch. You order dinner from apps. You buy coffee on the way to work instead of brewing it at home. You throw away clothes with minor damage because you don't know how to repair them. You pay someone to change your oil, to fix your sink, to hang pictures on your wall. You're earning more money than Dorothy ever dreamed of, and you're more helpless than she was at 14. This is the endpoint of the process that started 80 years ago. You've been completely severed from the knowledge that would let you survive outside the consumer economy. You don't know how to make things. You don't know how to fix things. You barely know how to maintain things. You're a consumer in the purest sense, a creature that exists to transform money into purchases, to feed the machine that depends on your incompetence. But here's what they don't want you to know. Those skills Dorothy had, they're not gone. They're not lost to time. They're just unpracticed. They're dormant, waiting. You're the biological descendant of millions of years of humans who made things, fixed things, created things with their hands. That capability is written into your DNA. You just have to wake it up. Start anywhere. Pick one skill. Learn to cook one meal from scratch. Learn to sew on a button. Learn to change a tire. Learn to fix a leaky faucet. It doesn't matter which skill. What matters is the act of learning it. The act of proving to yourself that you're not helpless, that you can do things, that you can solve problems with your hands and your brain instead of your credit card. Each skill you learn breaks one link in the chain of dependency. You learn to cook, and suddenly restaurants have less power over you. You learn to sew, and fast fashion loses its grip. You learn to fix things, and planned obsolescence becomes merely annoying instead of devastating. You're not going to become Dorothy. You're not going to can all your vegetables and churn your own butter. But you can stop being completely helpless. You can reclaim enough capability that you have options. Build things. Repair things. Make things last. Buy used instead of new. Learn from people who remember the old ways. Watch YouTube videos from craftspeople and homesteaders and repair enthusiasts who are trying to preserve knowledge that the market wants to destroy. Join communities of makers and fixers. Trade skills. Teach what you know. Learn what you don't. Every time you fix something, instead of replacing it, you're committing a small act of rebellion. You're refusing to participate in the cycle. You're keeping your money instead of giving it to corporations that designed the failure you just repaired. You're building competence. You're proving that you're more than a consumer. You're a person with hands and skills and the ability to solve problems. Dorothy's been dead for 20 years, but everything she knew is still accessible. It's in books. It's in videos. It's in the memories of the few people left who learned from people like her. It's recoverable. You can learn it. You can teach it to your children. You can break the cycle of engineered helplessness that's been tightening around your throat since before you were born. The system doesn't want you to know this, but you don't need them nearly as much as they need you. They need you buying. They need you helpless. They need you dependent. But you can learn to make do. You can remember what your great-grandmother knew. You can become capable again. It starts with one skill, one repair, one small act of creation, and then another and another, until slowly, incrementally, you transform from a consumer back into a producer, from helpless back into capable, from dependent back into free. Grandma didn't buy it. She made do, and so can you.